You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Thursday, August 22nd, back in the studio.
Yes, I had to have my phone in front of me the last 2 days.
To remind you what day it was?
I could not remember. On Tuesday, I didn't look before I turned my mic on, and it was a hot mess.
You do realize it's right here in front of you on the screen. It tells you what day it is. That's the only way I know what day it is when we start the program.
I'm really not smart some mornings. It's fine.
Glad to be back in the studio. We have something great to celebrate. Historic Trinity Lutheran Church here in St. Louis is celebrating a milestone anniversary, and we're going to share some of the great history and also how Historic Trinity Lutheran Church is serving and reaching out in the community here in St. Louis as well. Looking forward to sharing that with you today. Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon. I had to do all of that by myself. It was sad.
That's right.
Yeah.
It works much better in tandem,
It does.
Joining us in studio this morning, friends from Historic Trinity Lutheran Church in the beautiful Soulard neighborhood of St. Louis. In studio this morning, Pastor Steve Albers from Trinity. Good morning, Pastor Albers.
Good morning.
And Andrea Retker, Director of Christian Education, fellow DCE in the studio this morning. Good to have you here this morning.
Good morning.
So let's learn a little bit about the history of Trinity Lutheran Church. 180 years of proclaiming God's mercy, Christ's mercy for us here in St. Louis. When and how did Trinity find its beginning? Pastor Albers?
Well, there were some ships that came over, obviously, from Saxony, from Germany, and 4 of them made it, and they came upstream from New Orleans, and then some went back to Perry County the next spring. But they came because of their passion, and I'll use that word a lot. They had a real passion, which I think is kind of marvelous, passion for faith, for matters of faith, for being able to articulate that faith, express it in ways that were free to them. And that became, I am no historian by a long shot. There are more people, including the person to my left, who knows this a lot better than I do. But I was impressed by that zeal for the gospel, really. That was back in 1839 that they came.
Yeah, yeah. What was the original plan for Historic Trinity? What were they looking to do when they landed here in St. Louis?
Well, initially they worshipped in an Episcopal church, basement of an Episcopal church. I'm sure they intended to build a church, but mostly I think it's always interpretation, but I think they really wanted to continue and form a bond of oneness, a bond of unity. And I think they had to cement that. They really cared. They were really, really like a reflection of Acts 2 about really sharing in common. That's how I read that anyway. But I'm sure they wanted to build a church.
The neighborhood that Trinity is in now it's a very historic neighborhood. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship of Trinity with that old historic neighborhood in St. Louis?
Today?
Or back then?
Well,
or today? Either way.
Well, again, they don't hold me to this. But historically, one of the challenges that, according to our resident archivist, Dennis Rathert, they wanted to know where they had to build a larger church in the early 1860s, and they didn't know where, and they had sort of some disagreements on where to build the church. And there were some of the more affluent members of the church who just took it upon themselves to go out and buy land, and they bought it in Soulard. And so the rest is, as they say, history. But it's significant that because Soulard is such a, eclectic, well-known community neighborhood within St. Louis. So, boy, that was a wonderful thing that they didn't have any of that in mind, of course, but...
Andrea, anything you want to add to the history here? I know you've done some research of the history of Trinity as well.
Yeah, I guess it'd just sort of be interesting to watch as Trinity interacted with the neighborhood. The original building that they first built was down by the Arch, and then when they outgrew that, they moved to Soulard, where it was pretty much empty at the time, minus the Soulard Market, which is still in there. And so we've watched the whole neighborhood as a church grow up as Anheuser-Busch came in about 50 years later and grew up, as Prohibition went through the neighborhood. I'm pretty sure that didn't go well in Soulard. But so to see all these historic acts, as Ulysses S. Grant would sell stuff a block over from our church, Mark Twain was riding literally across the street from our sanctuary doors. So I think just seeing how all of that, it would have been fun to watch all of that be developed over the last 180 years as we just weren't passive people in the neighborhood, but as we were interacting with all of these historic events.
I didn't realize that it was closer, that it originally was built closer to the arch. I mean, that's right on the river then as well, pretty close to the river. So it's a little bit of a distance. I don't know how far that is now to where the new location is.
It's about 1.5 miles.
Okay.
Oh, that's closer than I thought.
Yeah.
I don't know St. Louis geography
I should
yet.
spend more time. What were who were some of the pastors that or significant names that our listeners might know who have been a part of Historic Trinity?
Well, more recently, of course, Pastor Dave Marth, who was Josh succeeded him as pastor, and before him, Sam Golterman, who at one time worked with BHE, I think, but he very, very prominent man in the synod. And, of course, all the way back to C.F.W. Walther, who was the second pastor, taking over after his brother Otto died suddenly. By the way, C.F.W. Walther, he looks pretty stern, and well, probably most of them were, but he really, I gained a little bit of a new appreciation for his theology. He was really all about grace. He fostered that. He said the church exists, the true church, paraphrased, exists because of God's grace. That's what the focus is. And I thought, boy, oh boy, no wonder. And they loved him. I mean, they had 3 churches, and they wanted him to preach at all of them. So he would preach in the morning, in the afternoon, and then the evening. Then he became president of the synod, and they reluctantly allowed him to do that. I don't think the guy ever slept. But again, his passion for the gospel, I read that in the seminary, but I think you gain a different appreciation when you look back at that history and you see the profoundness of that theology.
Through those many years, I'm sure there were times of abundance and times where things were scarce as well. What were some of the trying years and the challenges that Trinity faced?
I would guess sometime around the Great Depression, the neighborhood started a time of decline. Mm-hmm. It got to the point that the city of St. Louis was even going to blight the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And instead of just accepting that, I know the congregation at one point had a conversation as to whether they were going to close the doors or if they were going to take ministry and run with it, and they chose to run with it. But it took working with other agencies in the neighborhood. So we started working with the Catholic Church down the street to help create a homeless shelter and to start taking actions to turn the neighborhood around so that the city of St. Louis would not blight the neighborhood and turn it into a giant shipyard. So the neighborhood has been, literally from an entirely boarded up street to now people are paying $1 million for a house down there, and the neighborhood still shows that. We have homeless living next to millionaires, and we attempt to do ministry with both of those segments of the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. You talked a little bit about just the wide range of things that have gone on in Soulard. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I got yelled at a long time ago. I said it wrong. Yeah, Soulard.
Not Soulard.
Not Soulard. Yeah. Anyway, it's a St. Louis thing. But talk to me a little bit more about the witness that Trinity has been. You mentioned a few things about the witness that Trinity has been from its founding days.
Some of it's just the need for innovation. So we needed a body, so we helped create the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, or at that point, we needed a way to distribute information, so we helped form Concordia Publishing House. Mm-hmm. We became the first, needed a way to disseminate information, so we had a magazine, which became the forerunner for the Lutheran Witness. We needed education, so the seminary got moved. So it was a lot of running of different stuff that a church body needs. So a lot of innovation was coming by producing even the first hymnal for the synod.
Going way back, just a couple of years after the church was actually founded, which was 1847, I think that's what the dates seem to be anyway, and that's what we're celebrating. But there was a cholera epidemic in St. Louis, which really killed about a quarter of the residents in St. Louis, and of course that had to include people from Trinity. And then you mentioned, or one of you mentioned about being close to the river, and there was also I can't remember when, or I don't remember the date on that, but it was early in St. Louis's history that there was a massive fire that destroyed boats and basically the riverfront. I don't think that it impacted Trinity. I don't think, but then there was a tornado, which did impact Trinity. That everything was destroyed. The building was destroyed, except for the pulpit and the baptismal font.
Wow.
So that kind of resilience is more than a culture. I really think that goes again to the heart of faith and knowing that the Lord was leading them and guiding them.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to hear the history, to look at the history, and to see how a congregation is an integral part of a city's history, and how that city's history is also a part of who this congregation is as well. Celebrating 180 years of the Lord's blessings at Trinity, how are you celebrating that in the near future?
Well, that's a great segue, I think. It really reflects who we are as a congregation these days and what Trinity has been for these 180 years. Our 3-week focus is going to be start with Reformation again, the very hallmark of our seminal teachings, cardinal teachings of our church. The next week is going to be All Saints' Day celebration, again, reflecting on those saints who have gone before us. And then on the 10th is going to be the so-called actual celebration. And the theme is Forward in Faithfulness, based on Hebrews 12. And instead of having a dinner or potluck or whatever, we're actually going to have a mission and ministry fair, which reflects and displays all of the ways in which this congregation is involved in outreach and in ministry. So I think that's unique, and I'm glad to be part of it.
Celebrating 100 years of the Lord's blessings at historic Trinity Lutheran Church in Soulard, St. Louis, Missouri. Pastor Steve Albers and DCE Andrea Retger, thanks so much for being here. Andrea's going to stick around and share some more with us, because we're going to talk about what's happening today in historic Trinity as well, and we'll welcome some more friends from Trinity. You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
On this Thursday, August 22nd, 2019, KFUO Radio thanks our day sponsor, Mary Hamilton of Redbud, Illinois. Mary made a contribution to help share the gospel worldwide in loving memory of her wonderful and loving grandmother, Lottie Hannabit. Mary is also paying it forward in appreciation of Concordia, Wisconsin, sponsoring the Coffee Hour. Thank you, Mary Hamilton, for helping us share the gospel and for being today's KFUO day sponsor.
Hello, this is Dr. Dale Meyer. Have you heard Concordia Seminary's program, Word and Work and Intersection? Every week you can hear it on KFUO Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central Time. We visit with many interesting guests about how the Word of God applies to their daily vocations and ministries. Be sure to tune in, and may the intersection of Word and Work be busy on your corner.
Our listeners and supporters are talking about Worldwide KFUO.
One of my real aspirations is to set my mind on things above where Christ is. That's hard in that world of distraction. KFUO is really helping me to fix my mind on things above, to meditate on the things of Christ. You've been very helpful to me, and I appreciate it.
To leave a message on the KFUO comment line, call 314-996-1542. Worldwide KFUO.
For the next Law and Gospel Rumination Tuesday, I, Tom Baker, and Wes Reimnitz will discuss a resolution that occurred at the recent ELCA convention, and I am sure it will shock you what they now believe, which makes them not even Christian.
Listen to Law and Gospel weekday mornings beginning at 9:30 on KFUO.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Thursday, August 22nd, celebrating 180 years of the Lord's blessings at Historic Trinity Lutheran Church in St. Louis, in the neighborhood known as Soulard, St. Louis. If you're from St. Louis, you know where that is. It's a really unique, eclectic part of the community. Let's learn a little bit more about that community. We're talking with our friends from Trinity Lutheran Church. Andrea Recker, she's the Director of Christian Education at Historic Trinity, and we'll talk with Andrea a little bit more about what that neighborhood looks like today and how Historic Trinity is reaching out. Also joining us in studio now, Pastor Joshua Hatcher from Historic Trinity Lutheran Church. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Hey, it's good to be here.
And also joining us, Bob Kurtz, Community Care Director at Historic Trinity. Bob, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks.
So, Andrea, tell us, what does the neighborhood of Historic Trinity Lutheran Church, what does that Soulard neighborhood look like today?
So it's a community on the mend right now. We have about 13 bars within one block of our front door. It's the pick-up and drop-off space if you're going to a Blues game or St. Louis Cardinals game. We do Mardi Gras. We are the second largest celebration in the United States. It's a very eclectic neighborhood. You just never know what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everyone's choosing their words carefully.
Well, you know how it is. But there's also a huge market there that is fairly famous too.
Well known, yeah.
Well known market. I'm afraid of the crowds, so I haven't actually gone there yet. But what else makes Soulard a unique place for people? In our first segment, you mentioned homeless next to millionaires now. What else makes Soulard just a really cool place for people?
I think just it being a bar district,
I know.
It draws a lot of people.
True.
That's why people come. We have the largest pet parade, and it happens to end at our front doors. So we might sit out there and we might bless the pets that come by, which is really just us praying with the people holding the other end of the leash. Mm-hmm. So it gives us a lot of different ways of outreaching into the neighborhood because people are out, people are on their feet out on the streets. And so it allows us a lot of opportunities to go out and interact with tons of different types of people who are not traditional Lutherans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a fun part of downtown every time I go there. It's like brick streets and old French stuff, and I don't know, my heart's always happy.
Lots of city events happening.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff happening. But you mentioned all of the people that happen to walk by or just be around in the neighborhood. Where is witness and mercy needed in the neighborhood at large?
I think for the most part, what you're looking at is a neighborhood that's very authentic. Everybody's themselves all the time, their full selves. So any sort of veneer, any kind of gloss, you spot that a mile away. So walking humbly, I think, is important. We do a lot of service. We serve our neighbors, Bob, 60, 70 a day we'll feed breakfast to?
Yeah, 75, 80. Monday through Friday, we provide food for our friends who are poor, homeless. Also a variety of other services. We collect we call care kits, which are personal hygiene items that we distribute, clothing, shirts, especially during the summer, T-shirts, underwear, socks. We have Undie Sundays at Trinity from Mother's Day to Father's Day, where we collect these items, and we also help with once per heating or cooling season with utilities if residents in the 104 zip code. We help if they receive cutoff notices, things like that.
It's a neighborhood that is not filled with hyper culturally religious people. And a lot of them, I mean, like people all over the place, really, have been injured by institutional church at one point or another. Mm-hmm. So providing a place of proactive acceptance where people can come, where they can be loved, where they can encounter God in an authentic way, deeply meaningful. You watch lives being transformed left and right when people realize that they're loved by God. Sometimes it's the first time they've heard that. And so it changes the world, man. Changes neighborhoods, changes the world.
Andrea, what does your role look like as Director of Christian Education in an urban historic congregation? You know, many of us prepare for parish education, but it sounds like your service there encompasses so much more and involvement in the community as well.
I consider my job just God chaos. Yes. You never know what the job's going to entail, whether I'm going to be on the phone with the senator talking immigration or INS trying to get members not deported. It could be visiting someone in jail. It's helping families become stronger or to just bring Jesus in for the first time. And you never know what your day is going to start like, and you never know what it's going to finish like. You can have someone show up naked at the front door that needs clothes, and that's what you're going to do that day. But I have a privilege to be able to bring Jesus to children and youth and families that don't look like a suburban family, and I love that.
How, Bob, share with us some more of the ways that, share some more details about how Trinity serves through acts of mercy and as in the community care that you were talking about earlier. You had shared a few of the ways. Paint some pictures for us and help us see what that really looks like.
Sure. Well, with community care, like I said, there's a lot of poor and our homeless friends that are in the area that go between different churches down there and looks for help. And like I said, we serve meals 6 days a week from 9 to 10:30, and through donated food items and. The main things that we do is we couldn't survive without prayer, volunteers, and donations. And also that not only do we provide there at the parish house the food, helping out with utility assistance, but next door in our school building, Helping Hand-Me-Downs operates out of there, which they donate. Families can come in and get anything baby stuff, clothes, car seats, cribs, anything. They collect anything baby that folks can come in and they help with that. There's also a St. Louis reentry program for ex-offenders. They meet twice a week. They have meetings for those folks, but our homeless friends in the area have experienced Christ's mercy, through these acts. But we also, I think, the next step we want to go forward with is we'd like to see more of our friends in worshiping with us. That's been slow so far. And I think that's where we're at now. The next step, how do we make that happen? Because there seems to be a bridge that we haven't been able to cross yet, to where they see Trinity as more than a sandwich and a cup of coffee, but where they can hear the gospel also.
We have just under a minute left. Pastor Hatcher, can you sum up what are the challenges, but also the joys of a historic urban congregation like Trinity today?
The challenges are kind of this binary between, on the one hand, we're a deeply historic campus, and 180 years may be historic, on this side of the ocean. But we think of ourselves more as a 180-year-old campus of a 2,000-year-old church. So trying to balance this sort of story that we have that the bricks of the building tell, which is good and beautiful and fine, but really, man, we're a neighborhood in Soulard. We're a church that tries to reach out to that neighborhood. We're celebrating 180 years of history so that we can celebrate the next 180 years looking forward. So the challenge is really to let the gospel speak and to kind of allow our history to stand underneath that rather than to be the driver itself. The greatest joy is, again, the authenticity of it, just the radical acceptance of Christ in that place.
Pastor Josh Hatcher, Historic Trinity Lutheran Church, Andrea Retker, thank you so much for being here. Bob Kurtz, thanks for being here and sharing the story of and the celebration of God's blessings at Historic Trinity. Thanks so much. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulta.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.